Hello and welcome back to another episode of Carnegie Insights. I'm Dinakar Peri, your host for this evening. So, what's on the menu today? Let's take a look. So, first we'll talk about the first tri-service seminar Ran Samvad that happened last week, and an important aspect that got highlighted there: the creation of or the reorganization of Indian military into theatre commands. So, we'll get into it, what it means, and what was the important development on that front. Next is an announcement by the defense minister on the co-development of a jet engine with France. The third and the last thing for this episode, the commissioning of two naval ships and its significance and some associated things around it. So let's get into each of the issues. Firstly, the Ran Samvad and the issue of theatre commands. So Ran Samvad was the first tri-service seminar organized by the Defense Ministry, Integrated Defense Staff last week at the Army War College in Madhya Pradesh. So this pushed by the Chief of Defense Staff, General Anil Chauhan. The idea was that senior officers should kind of put forward their thoughts on changing warfare, the nature of things, technology coming in, etc. The whole gamut of things. And for younger officers to listen to them, deliberate on it, and interact with the senior brass on it. So that was the broad idea as stated by the CDS, and he also, in fact, said they see Ran Samvad as a Shangri-La kind of a thing, for a major dialogue focused on defense. So this is the first edition. It will now become an annual feature, and the theme of this edition was impact of technology on warfare. So the 1.5 day deliberations saw a whole range of themes of unmanned warfare, grey zone tactics, information warfare, narrative management, and technology accretion. The whole range of technologies. Unmanned is one. There are so many others that are changing the very landscape of how warfare functions today. So they were all kind of discussed there. I'll give you a broad takeaways from that. The first one, the defense minister in his opening address talked of, among the various things he touched upon, one particular aspect is interesting. He actually said it is difficult to predict how long wars will last in the current day and age. And so he actually cautioned that, it can be days, weeks, months, and the military should be prepared for it. They should be able to, whether the whole ecosystem needs to be there to be able to hold on that for long. And why is it important? Because before the war in Ukraine began, 2022, the Indian military kind of was looking at or planning around short wars, short and swift wars, which was probably a few days before global pressure, international intervention, or a ceasefire coming in, etc. But then the war in Ukraine kind of changed the entire thought process. As 3 years now, so then the Indian military really began conceiving or planning for longer wars. So the whole process of the supply chain ecosystem, larger ammunition cycles, your support echelons, etc., etc. They started planning for that. Though, in fact, again, in May, what we saw of Sindoor was 5 days. The possibility of a long drawn war still looms large. Even you can't rule it out. So that's an important point made by the defense minister. Next, so I'll just play a video here of the key takeaways from Ran Samvad as enunciated and encapsulated by the CDS.
Some of the key takeaways which have been noting down from this first edition of Ran Samvad is first is, I think, democratization for the means of violence, which is affordable attrition is leveling the power balance and asymmetries. That's the first lesson that we can take. Second, I think, is that precision is replacing mass. Third is warfare is slowly graduate from being human-led to machine-led. Ethical issues will need to be deliberated, identified, and addressed. Narrative building during the physical progress of conflict will become vital. That's the fourth lesson. Information warfare must get integrated into kinetic operations. That's the fifth lesson which I take. Need to evolve a US and a counter-US framework on a war footing. That thing I think is important because the kind of emphasis on drones, where at least the Army at least spoke about The legacy technologies also matter and must concurrently invest in all those along with dual use and disruptive technologies.
So that was the key takeaways as enunciated at the highest level from the military. So now the seminar also saw the release of few doctrines and plans. So one of them was the technology, perspective, and capability development roadmap. That's a key document put out by the three services. This actually was a combined document of the three services of what they need, the capabilities they need, given the threat perception, and to have those capabilities, what do they need, to augment those capabilities, to build those capabilities. So it actually lays that out. So part of this will be declassified, unclassified for the industry, so they can actually come up with solutions. That probably will be done in the near future. Apart from that, the three doctrines, joint doctrines, were also released. They are on the screen for you. Special forces, airborne and heliborne operations, and multi-domain operations. So now the emphasis is increasingly on jointness. So anything, all these specialized doctrines that come out are all joint doctrines. So now let's go to the important issue that actually came up or stood out, became the highlight of during Ran Samvad. Theatre commands. So the idea of reorganizing the Indian military, Indian armed forces into geography-based theatre commands has been, ideated for some time, and it actually took forward towards, realizing it when the Chief of Defence Staff, an office was created, and the Chief of Defence Staff was appointed. So India's first Chief of Defence Staff was appointed in 2020. December 2019, the post was created, and then Army Chief General Bipin Rawat was appointed as the first CDS of this country. And in fact, one of the charters, if I can move a little ahead, was bring jointness, integration, and leading up to the creation of these theatre commands. So, in very, very short line sentence, what is a theatre command? So, typically, as we know, the current structure of the armed forces, you have Army, Navy, Air Force, which function in different domains, and they work together, operate together where required, as contingencies arise. But theatre command is more of a geography-based approach where you identify territory, a certain area or a border or a front, and there anything in that, any respect to the service, they all come under one commander, one operational commander. So the Army, Navy, Air Force, all elements go under one individual or one commander who take for that geography or defined space. That's a theatre command. So that was the idea. And CDS was probably one of the, in fact, is the highest military reorganization since independence, India's independence in 1947. This would have, that was a high-end military reform. Theatre commands, if and when they realize, will be the biggest reorganization of the Indian armed forces since independence. So, what is the contention now, or what is the issue? The process has been going on. General Bipin Rawat worked on it. A lot of ideation happened on that front. Detailed reports were drawn out at the stage of vice chief of each service, each one given a task. They gave detailed reports of how they can be realized. So that was all done. Iterations were done. They were exercised in tabletop exercise as to how they would play out. And then there was going back on how or what is required. One of the planned commands, it was felt was not needed, so things went bad. And unfortunately, at the unlikely, untimely demise of General Rawat in a helicopter crash, the process kind of stalled for a bit till the next CDS was appointed. General Anil Chauhan, when he took over as a CDS in October 2022, again he started the process in many ways from the scratch, building consensus, working out the modalities. So what happened at Ran Samvad? So the Air Force Chief, Air Chief Marshal AP Singh, in a fireside chat, made a important observation. So he said, we don't need any new structures right now. In fact, he gave the example of Ops Indoor, of how seamlessly they worked and how coordination went very well between with the CDS at the helm, bringing other three chiefs together, other agencies together, ensuring synergy where required, if there were gaps, etc. So he actually cautioned that let us not come under pressure to create new structures. And so he actually proposed a joint planning and coordination center in Delhi, reporting or directly under the Chiefs of Staff Committee. That's the CDS and the three service chiefs. CDS is the permanent chairman of the Chief of Staff Committee, with the three services chiefs also included in it. So that's the proposal he gave. And the Navy chief, in his address at the seminar Ran Samvad, so he said, we are committed to integration, jointness with the three services, etc. And he talked of how things have changed so much, in the last few years. And while saying that, he said, with theaterization as the ultimate goal, we are proceeding ahead with the goal of unified planning, coordination, etc., etc. So he actually kind of, made a push for theater commands, while the Air Force chief said, maybe, it's not the time to create structures for the sake of them, rather deliberate, ideate, and see how things can work. And in fact, the next day, or in the concluding session, the Chief of Defence Staff also weighed in. He made some observations. I'll play the video for you so you can listen to it yourself. So in fact, the Chief of Defence Staff recently he authored a book where the last line, the rest of it is on the screen. The creation of theatre commands is the beginning of this change and will kickstart the next generation of reforms of the armed forces. That's what the current CDS wrote in the book he authored in the chapter on jointness and integration. So that said, what was the envisaged plan of the conceived setup of the theatre commands for the Indian military? 3 geographic commands, that is the latest iteration of it. There were many, this is the latest. Where things stand. The Western Theatre Command focused on Pakistan, Northern Theatre Command focused on China, and a Maritime Theatre Command looking after the entire India's 10,000 kilometer long coastline. That was the envisaged plan. So what would the 3 chiefs do? Service chiefs. They would look after the raise, train, and sustain functions, while the operational role would be the theatre commanders, reporting to the Chief of Staff Committee. That's again the envisaged plan. One of the proposals or the last recommendations was for the theatre commanders also to be 4-star officers. So that something the government has to take a call. We'll have to wait how things go forward, and especially with the current observations by the Air Force Chief of how things actually panned out, the integration, how it worked during Op Sindoor. It may have implications on how things go forward. We'll have to wait and watch on that. And then a very, very important observation by the Air Chief again here, important to note, is he made an observation that the CDS currently does not have an operational role. So he said we should maybe do a rethink instead of just going up for theatre commands. So that's an important observation. So let's wait and watch how things shape up. Now, a quick video of the CDS comments on theatre commands or jointness, not theatre commands per se.
As a CDS, I actually set out to promote jointness among the 3 services, and today I can say with some kind of pleasure and confidence that we can speak about our differences in a very conducive kind of environment, openness with patients and other different and alternate points of view without temperatures being risen. So even if you don't agree with the point, there could be hundreds of points which are discussed over here on which they may not have been, they could have been a dissonance among the 3 services, but yet we are able to listen to that point. I think that thing is very important, and I'm hopeful that something of this may have rubbed down to the veterans who are over here, which may hold actually even larger desire to protect their kind of turfs. So that I think is a very good sign. So if you have sensed some kind of a dissonance, let me assure you that we will resolve it to the best interest of the nation. So whether it is about drones or whether it is about air littoral, that's a term which I heard today, or say even integrated command structures.
That's where we are. Let's move to the next subject. Before that, one point to add here is a few countries have theatre commands. The US, which is just a quick point to add here. A few countries have theater commands already. The US is one which has a global presence in terms of its military. And then is China, which actually reorganized its military from seven verticals to five geographic theater commands. And I'll just quickly show you a picture. Here, this is how the Chinese theater commands look like. For example, the Southern Theater Command looks after the Taiwan and that area, while the Western Theater Command is what looks after the Indian border and Tibet, etc. So that's where the things are. So let's go to the next topic for today, the jet engine. So India has been trying to co-develop a jet engine with collaboration with a foreign original equipment manufacturer, and talks have been on originally with France, Safran of France. Then it was opened up when things agreement didn't really work out. When Rolls-Royce and General Electric, Rolls-Royce of UK and General Electric from US, also kind of gave detailed proposals. Discussions have been going on for some time. So just 2 weeks back, in fact, exactly last week, the Defense Minister, India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, speaking at an event, announced that they're going to co-develop a new engine with Safran of France for India's 5th generation fighter, which is the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft called AMCA. That's a major announcement and a major milestone in India's efforts to have go through the cycle of designing and developing a jet engine, which is actually the prerogative of very few countries. It's among the most protected and sought after different military technologies, and the fact that just literally a handful of them have says how important it is. So just a quick, very briefly of where we are, what happened, and where we are. So India did attempt developing its own jet engine beginning in the late 80s, along with the light combat aircraft, which is India's indigenous single-engine jet fighter. So a program began, but really it did not really fructify in the way it was desired. So after a point, it was shut down, and it actually saw the building of 9 prototypes. A lot of testing happened. The engine was even flown to Russia to be tested on a flying test bed, but it did not meet the requirements. So that was eventually shut down, and about 2,000 odd crores rupees were spent on the project. So now, where is the broad status of India's engine segment, jet engine? So India's light combat aircraft, as I said, the LCA, the Mark 1, the first variant of it, is powered by a General Electric F40404 engine. That powers the current LCA Mark 1. The soon to be inducted LCA Mark 1A, it's a slightly more capable aircraft than the predecessor, which about 180 of them will be eventually manufactured. And then the LCA Mark II, a larger and more capable aircraft, will be powered by the same GE F414 engine. What you see on screen is that engine. So this engine will power the LCA Mark II. Anywhere 120 or so aircraft are planned to be built, it can go up depending on given the current requirements. And the same 414 engine will also be used for the development of the AMCA. The design and development phase of the AMCA will be done with the 414 engine, and the initial at least couple of squadrons of the AMCA Mark 1 will also be with the same 414 engine. So where does the new engine come in? The new engine comes in for the AMCA Mark 2. Again, a much more capable variant of the 5th generation fighter, which will again be larger because the engine capacity is going up. The new engine is expected to be in the 110 to 120 kilonewton thrust category. So that's a much bigger, more powerful engine than the current engine, what you see here, 414. So new aircraft, bigger aircraft, more capabilities, etc., etc. So that's going to take some time. And there's about a 10 to 12, 13 year time frame for the engine development. So these two will happen parallelly, the design development of the AMCA Mark 1 and initial production, while the AMCA 2 also, the engine development also progresses. By the time this kind of is tapering off, the Mark 1, some mature stage, the Mark 2 will come in or will start the production phase. So that's where things are as we stand. So to the next issue now. So let's look at the third and final issue for this episode, the ship commissioning. So the Indian Navy last week commissioned 2 frontline warships, 2 state-of-the-art frontline frigates into service. They are called INS Himgiri and Udayagiri. So both of them were built by 2 different defense sector shipyards, Mazgan Dock Limited, Mumbai, and GRSC, Calcutta, Garden Deep Shipbuilders. So, and incidentally, these also happen to be the 100th and 101st warship to be designed by the Indian Navy's in-house design bureau. So, Indian Navy has a design bureau which began with small patrol boats. Now it has actually, come of age, designing even an aircraft carrier. We'll actually see a short video of the aircraft carrier in the end. So, why is, while we talk of these 2 ships, they are a great capability addition. The other significance, why are we talking about it particularly today? Because this year, the Indian Navy has commissioned 8 frontline ships into service so far, till date. And there are 4 more to go. So this year in 2025, Indian Navy will induct eventually 12 frontline warships and 11 warships and 1 submarine. The submarine was already done. That's a new record and a benchmark. And currently the Indian Navy, among the largest navies worldwide, has about 140 ships and submarines. And it has a target of reaching about 175 ships by 2035. So that's a big number, again, among the largest numbers globally. However, the Chinese Navy, the PLA Navy, People's Liberation Army Navy, is on a massive expansion spree. In recent times, okay, before we go there, just look at a quick video of Himgiri before we move forward.
With cutting-edge sensors, next-generation indigenous automated weapon systems and intrinsic stealth, she is invisible on the battlefield, invincible in battle. Powered by a modern combined diesel or gas propulsion system, she has both endurance and speed.
These ships pack a punch. They are armed with BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles, the long-range surface-to-air missiles, co-developed by India with Israel, and a host of other things. And they are actually capable of multi-role operations, multi-domain operations, in fact. And that's where this is the ship. And let's go forward now. So, and again, just broadly about shipbuilding. Why is it, again, when we say 12 ships, etc., why is it important? According to the economic survey, which is published by the government of India just before the budget every year in February, shipbuilding has a multiplier effect, which flows back money into the economy. One, it generates many more times, probably among the highest amount of employment generation, etc., happens in shipbuilding among various sectors, and also flow back into the local economy. That's again a phenomenal amount of that happens, which generates, because you need a whole shipbuilding is an entire ecosystem, a huge ecosystem, like aviation. So if you see the numbers on screen, among the manufacturing activities, highest employment multipliers of 6.48. That's huge. From 1 is to 6.48. And at the same time, the investment multiplier, how much does it do? 1.82. So what does it mean? So for every 1.5 lakh crore, this is rupees, of shipbuilding naval projects, there's a circulation economy, because it multiplies. There's a multiplier effect. It brings back 2.73 lakh crores in shipbuilding sector. So that's where how it is. And in fact, the 2 ships you have seen, what we talked about a couple of minutes back, which are the Project 17 Alpha, Project 17A class of ships. So 3/4 of the project cost is actually being invested back into the economy as being built here. And those ships also happen to have, they employ integrated modular construction, significantly bringing down the construction time. In fact, one of the ships was delivered to the Indian Navy from keel laying to delivery was done in record time of 30 odd months, and which significantly cutting down time from earlier projects. So that's an important milestone again. So moving forward, when I talked about China, so coming to China, Chinese Navy today is the world's largest Navy in numbers. Capability, we can, it's still the US Navy in terms of their aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, etc. In terms of sheer numbers, it's the Chinese Navy today. It has long overtaken even the US in terms of numbers. And the US assessments say that by 2025, it's going to be, end of this year, it's going to be 395 ship Navy. So it's, way beyond by any metrics. And by 2030, in 5 years from now, it's going to be 435 ships. They're adding 100 ships in about 6 years, 5 years time. So that's the pace of their construction. And in comparison, the US Navy today has 296 battleships as of August 2024. So you can see the numbers. And just to finish it here, before we close, Chinese, not just the overall numbers, they are also improving the quality and the tonnage and the firepower of those ships, the capability of those ships. So China is currently just almost finishing the sea trials of its third aircraft carrier. The first carrier was actually a mothballed ship they brought from Ukraine, then refurbished into a fresh carrier. Learning commissioned in September 2012. Then they got a second one commissioned in December 2019. And today we are already 2025. They are all set or close to commissioning their third carrier. And each one is bigger than the earlier one. And the third one, the Fujian as it's called, it actually sets new benchmarks and takes them, the naval capability several notches higher, only next to the United States. Because this is a 80,000 ton ships, displacing 80,000 tons and capable of carrying 40 to 50 aircraft and helicopters. That's huge. No one other than the US has been able to do that so far. And the most important thing, this carrier, instead of steam catapults to launch aircraft, which is, most of them actually do that now, they have a EMOS, electromagnetic launch mechanism, to launch aircraft, which is much more efficient. They can launch much heavier aircraft. Only the US has done it, no one else so far. So they're going to reach a new milestone in that once they actually deploy the carrier, commission the carrier. Let's take a quick look. This is the carrier as it looks. As I said, 80,000 tons displacement. And before we close, Indian Navy also has 2 aircraft carriers. This is Indian carrier, INS Vikrant, India's first indigenous aircraft carrier. A proposal to build a repeat order of a Vikrant, a similar sized carrier with a few modifications and improvements, is actually currently under waiting approval. The case is before the Defence Acquisition Council headed by the Defence Minister for initial approval. And this is about 40,000 tons, has 20 plus aircraft and helicopters. It operates the MiG-29K. And Indian Navy has already contracted 26 Rafale Marine from France, which will join in a few years from now. So let's take a look at the video as we go. This video is from a helicopter as we were turning around. So this is the carrier sailing. And you can also see a helicopter waiting to land on the carrier. So that's where we are. And thank you. Hope you enjoyed this and you learned something from this episode. We look forward to the next. Thank you.